What happens when the most unfiltered voice in American radio meets a royal who's used to having the final say? The result is nothing short of explosive. When Prince Harry sat down in Howard Stern's studio, he expected another safe, sympathetic interview. But this wasn't Oprah's couch, and Howard Stern wasn't there to play nice. From the moment Harry entered the Sirius XM studio, with his team of handlers and pre-approved topics, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Stern, famously allergic to celebrity control, immediately set the tone. Leaning back in his chair with that trademark smirk, Howard dove straight in. "So, Harry, promoting your new Netflix doc, huh? Don't you think people are getting tired of the whole poor me, born into privilege routine?" The studio went silent. Harry's smile froze for a fraction of a second before he gave his well-rehearsed response about authentic experience and mental health. But Howard wasn't buying it. "Right," Stern said, voice heavy with irony. "Mental health? But at what point does sharing your truth become a profitable business model?" Harry bristled, insisting his story helped others heal. But Stern pounced again. "You know what trauma is? It's growing up in the Bronx without food, not getting the wrong breakfast at your estate." Even Robin, Howard's longtime co-host, whispered, "Oh boy." The cracks in Harry's calm started to show. His voice rose as he fired back about the loss of his mother, media harassment, and racism against his wife. Stern didn't flinch. "Ah, the racism card again," he sneered. "Every bit of criticism turns into racism. Maybe people just think you're entitled." The color drained from Harry's face as Stern pressed harder. "You talk about privacy, yet sell every corner of your life to Netflix and book publishers. Don't you see the hypocrisy?" Harry was cornered. The interview that began as a PR victory quickly devolved into one of the most uncomfortable on-air clashes in recent memory. A live moment where royal Polish met raw American provocation, and no one walked away unscathed. Harry was visibly unraveling under the pressure, his polished composure beginning to crack. You could see him searching for words that might calm the fire while still defending himself. But Howard had backed him into a corner. "We share our story on our terms," Harry finally said, his tone firm but strained. "To counter the lies and misinformation that have followed us for years." Howard let out a sharp laugh, the kind that cuts, not amuses. "Your terms, huh? God forbid anyone else have an opinion about the guy who ditched his family, moved to California, and now makes a fortune bashing the very monarchy that gave him a name and an audience. Tell me, Harry, if you hate being a royal so much, why keep the title? Why still call yourself the Duke of Sussex?" That question landed like a punch. Harry's jaw tightened, anger flashing in his eyes. His handlers shifted uneasily, signaling for him to stop. But Harry had had enough of being polite. After years of carefully curated interviews, he was finally ready to push back. "You know what, Howard?" he snapped. "I came here expecting an intelligent discussion about real issues. But clearly, you're more interested in cheap tabloid gossip than anything meaningful." Howard's eyebrows shot up, a dangerous smile spreading across his face. The veteran broadcaster had just been challenged, and in his own studio. "Oh, I see," he said, voice low and calm, a tone his audience knew meant trouble. "So I'm the villain for asking real questions instead of kissing your royal ass like Oprah and the rest of your sycophants. Maybe if His Royal Highness can't handle being challenged, he shouldn't be doing interviews at all." Then Howard leaned back, that signature smirk returning. His next words were cold and surgical. "You know what this is really about, Harry? You're jealous. Jealous that your brother gets to be king while you're out here hustling Netflix deals to stay relevant. All that mental health and protecting my family talk, it's just cover for the fact that you're the spare, the one who couldn't handle being second." The color drained from Harry's face. For a moment, he looked like he'd been hit. Even Robin Quivers gasped, realizing Howard had crossed a line few dared to approach. The room went dead silent. The kind of silence that comes just before something explodes. "How dare you!" Harry said, voice trembling with rage. "How dare you reduce everything I've lived through to jealousy? You have no idea what it's like to lose your mother in front of the world, to watch your wife be torn apart by the same press that hounded her to death." Howard didn't flinch. If anything, Harry's fury only seemed to fuel him. "Oh, spare me the theatrics," he said. "Your mother's been gone for over 25 years. At some point, maybe stop using that as an excuse for every mistake you make. And as for Megan being destroyed, she's a millionaire living in a California mansion. If that's destruction, sign me up." Harry's hands were shaking now, his voice breaking. "She was suicidal, Howard," he said, barely keeping control. "My wife wanted to take her own life because of the relentless abuse. And you're sitting here turning it into a punchline." "Suicidal?" Howard repeated, his tone darkening. If she was really in that bad of a place, why not just walk away quietly? Why the Netflix series? The Oprah special? The memoir? If someone I loved was truly suffering, I wouldn't monetize it. I'd protect them. The tension in the room was electric. What began as an interview had turned into a raw, brutal duel. One that would leave both men exposed in ways they hadn't anticipated. Howard's words sliced through the air like a blade. "If someone I loved was truly suffering," he said coldly, "I'd get them help. I wouldn't turn their pain into a media empire." The accusation hung heavy in the room. Harry's breathing quickened. His composure was slipping fast. His handlers were waving frantically from behind the glass, urging him to end it. But he was past the point of control. The years of bottled anger, criticism, and humiliation were finally boiling over. "You're sick!" Harry spat, his voice shaking with fury. "You're actually sick, Howard. Do you enjoy this? Tearing people apart for entertainment, mocking mental health struggles? No wonder your own relationships are a disaster. Who could ever love someone so cruel?" The jab hit deep. Howard's smirk vanished instantly, replaced by a cold, dangerous stillness. The tension in the studio turned suffocating. Everyone could feel it. Something irreversible had just shifted. "Oh, now we're getting personal," Howard said quietly, his tone lethal. "Fine. Let's get personal, Your Royal Highness." He leaned forward, eyes locked on Harry. "Let's talk about how you abandoned your family when they needed you most. Your grandfather was dying. Where were you? Cutting Netflix deals in California. Your grandmother, the woman who gave you everything, spent her final years without you because you were too busy playing victim across the Atlantic." Harry shot to his feet, his chair screeching against the floor. "Don't you dare talk about my grandmother," he growled. "Don't you dare drag her into this circus." "Sit down," Howard ordered, his voice low but commanding. "You came on my show. You play by my rules. And my rules say we don't stop until we get the truth." Harry let out a bitter laugh, refusing to sit. "The truth? You wouldn't recognize the truth if it slapped you in the face. You're a bitter, miserable man who feeds on other people's pain because you've achieved nothing meaningful in your life." Howard stood too now, tall and unflinching. His presence filled the room. "The truth," he shot back, "is that you're a spoiled brat who's never worked a real day in his life. You turned your family's private pain into a global pity parade because you can't stand not being the center of attention. Weak." Harry's voice cracked with anger. "I served my country in Afghanistan while you sat in a soundproof booth making prank calls. I've dedicated my life to veterans, to mental health, to real causes. What have you done besides mock people for profit?" "I've entertained millions for 40 years. Howard snapped. "I've built an empire by being honest. I don't hide behind charity campaigns to avoid taking responsibility for my choices. I don't burn bridges and then cry when people stop clapping. The studio was a battlefield now. 2 men standing, faces inches apart, fury radiating between them. Harry's security detail shifted, ready to step in, while the crew watched in frozen disbelief. "You want to know what I think?" Howard barked. "You're just like your father. Weak, entitled, completely out of touch. The only difference is Charles had the decency to keep his misery private, instead of turning it into a media circus." That broke Harry. His face twisted with rage, his fists clenched. For one terrifying second, it looked like he might actually strike him. Security tensed, waiting for the explosion. "Don't you ever compare me to him!" Harry snarled, his voice almost unrecognizable. "You know nothing about my life. You sit in your glass box judging people you'll never understand. You're nothing, nothing." But Howard didn't flinch. If anything, the fury in front of him only made him more certain of his power. He leaned forward, voice low and cutting. "I'm nothing," he said slowly. "I'm not the one who built my entire identity on a title I claim to despise. You said," Howard leaned forward, voice low and cutting, "you abandoned your duty, turned your back on your family, and now spend your days whining about how hard your privileged life has been. At least I own what I am. You, on the other hand." He paused deliberately, letting the silence coil tight around them. Harry stood trembling, every muscle in his jaw locked as he waited for the blow. "You're just a coward," Howard said finally, the words slicing through the air like a knife. "A coward who couldn't handle the pressure of being royal. So you ran off to America and told yourself it was about principles. But we both know the truth, don't we? You didn't leave to protect your family, or to fight racism, or for any noble cause you keep peddling. You left because being a working royal was hard, and you've never done anything hard in your life." The color drained from Harry's face. His hands clenched at his sides as he forced out, "You don't know what you're talking about." The words came through gritted teeth, weak, trembling. Howard sensed the crack and drove straight through it. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," Howard said, eyes locked on him. "I've been doing this for 40 years. I read people. I know what makes them tick. And you, Harry, you're an open book. You had everything handed to you and still couldn't hack it. So when the press got mean, when your wife faced the same scrutiny every royal has faced for generations, you ran." "Stop!" Harry whispered, but Howard didn't stop. He could smell blood. "You want to talk about your mother?" Howard went on, his tone turning sharp, mocking. "Diana would be ashamed of what you've become. She faced the same media, the same pressure, and she stayed. She fought from within. She didn't flee to California to make Netflix documentaries about how hard her life was." That was it. Something inside Harry snapped. "How dare you!" he shouted, voice raw, cracking with emotion. "How dare you invoke my mother's name? You didn't know her. You have no right to say her name, let alone speak for her." Howard didn't flinch. "I have every right!" he roared back. "This is my show, and I'll say whatever I want. And here's what I want to say. Your mother died fighting for something real, while you're living in a mansion whining about how the world's been unfair to you." Harry stepped toward the desk, fury blazing in his eyes. His security team moved instantly, intercepting him before he got too close. "You're disgusting!" Harry hissed. "A disgusting, heartless man who profits from other people's pain. No wonder your audience is made up of losers who find joy in watching others fall apart." Howard barked a cold laugh. "My audience? At least they don't pretend to be saints while cashing in on family trauma. They're honest about what they want. Entertainment. Unlike you, sitting here pretending this interview is beneath you, when you're the one who begged to come on to promote your next payday." I never begged to be anywhere near you. Harry snapped. This was a mistake. A massive mistake. Howard grinned, throwing up his hands. Finally, honesty. Yeah, it was a mistake. But not for the reason you think. You thought you could come in here and control the narrative like you do everywhere else. You thought you could manipulate me the way you manipulate the press. Your image. Your story. Harry started pacing behind his chair like a cornered animal, his handlers desperately trying to signal him to stop. You're delusional if you think this was manipulation, he said, his voice trembling with rage. This was me trying to have a civilized conversation with someone I thought was a professional. Clearly I was wrong. Professional? Howard scoffed, leaning back with a smirk. Kid, I've been a professional longer than you've been alive. The difference is, I'm honest about what I do. I tear people down for entertainment and I don't apologize for it. You hide behind charity and victimhood, pretending to be noble while doing the exact same thing. For profit. Howard leaned in with a cruel grin. You're really just another celebrity cashing in on your trauma, aren't you? Harry froze. His voice dropped to a deadly calm. That's it, he said quietly. I'm done. This interview is over. He started removing his headphones, but Howard's voice cut through the air like a whip. Oh no, you don't get to storm out and play the victim again. Howard called after him. You came on my show. You answer my questions. That's how this works. Harry spun around, eyes blazing. I don't answer to you, he snapped. I don't answer to anyone anymore. That's the whole point of leaving. A concept your tiny bitter brain clearly can't grasp. Howard stood up, voice rising. Then why keep the title? If you're so independent, why are you still the Duke of Sussex? Why not just be Harry Mountbatten Windsor, private citizen, instead of milking your royal name for every dollar it's worth? The challenge hung heavy in the room. For a moment, Harry looked caught off guard. His lips parted, but no words came. The silence stretched long enough to sting. That's what I thought. Howard said finally, savoring the moment. You can't give it up. Because without that title, you're nothing. Without Prince, you're just another washed-up celebrity with daddy issues and a podcast no one listens to. That did it. Something inside Harry snapped. He tore off his headphones and hurled them across the room, the crash echoing through the studio. You're sick, he shouted, voice breaking. You're actually sick. I feel sorry for anyone who has to live or work with you. Howard didn't flinch. Feel sorry for yourself, he shot back coldly. You're the one who's going to have to live with being a disappointment to everyone who ever believed in you. Harry stood there, chest heaving, torn between fury and disbelief. Then slowly, he straightened up. You know what, Howard? You win, he said bitterly. You got what you wanted. You turned this into a circus, and now you'll make money off humiliating me. Congratulations. Howard smirked. Don't you dare act like I exploited you. You knew exactly what kind of show this was. You thought you could handle it, and you couldn't. That's on you. Everything's on me, right? Harry said, his voice shaking. My mother's death, my wife's struggles, my family's dysfunction, the press. It's all my fault, according to you, because I didn't just shut up and take it. Howard leaned closer, his smile razor-sharp. Now you're finally starting to get it. Some self-awareness at last. Harry stared at him for a long silent moment. When he finally spoke, his tone was quiet, but laced with disgust. I actually pity you, he said. I pity anyone who thinks this is success. Sitting in a booth, tearing people down, turning cruelty into profit. What a sad, empty way to live. Without another word, he turned and walked toward the door. His handlers and security scrambled to follow. Hey, Harry, Howard called after him, voice dripping with triumph. Thanks for proving my point. Don't let the door hit you on your way back to irrelevance. Harry paused at the door, hand on the handle. For a moment, it seemed like he might turn around. Instead, he just shook his head and walked out, leaving the studio in stunned silence. Howard sank back into his chair, smirk returning. "Well," he said into the mic, "I think that went pretty well. What do you think, Robin?" Robin, pale and shaken, could only whisper, "Oh my God." Howard turned back to his audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, voice booming with satisfaction, "Prince Harry has left the building. And I think we all just learned what happens when entitled celebrities think they can control the conversation. Spoiler alert, they can't." As Harry's SUV sped away from the Sirius XM building, the raw, unedited audio was already being uploaded. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation began to explode across social media. Howard had gotten exactly what he wanted, a viral moment for the ages. And Harry? He had just learned the most brutal truth of all. Some battles can't be won, especially when you're fighting on someone else's turf.